It was actually way cooler than I expected it to be.
Wow, this is very intuitive.
That was cool. Oh, I did it!
Unbelievable.
That was really fun, and that was a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Welcome to Upward with Transfr, where we tackle our evolving workforce and how educators, governments, and industries are changing to keep up. We're dedicated to building effective pathways for workers and job seekers to get the skills they need to get into well-paying careers in high-growth industries. Our part in that is designing and distributing hands-on simulations that learners can use to explore new career options and develop core skills before entering an in-person vocational training program. Transfr simulations augment human educators, broadening their range of classroom possibilities without expensive facilities build-outs or specialized equipment. I'm Jack Sislak, Editorial Director at Transfr, and your host for this episode. I'm joined by Transfr's own Yoonjin Roh, PhD, Director of Data Science, and Keith Lyle, PhD, Director of Learning Science. This is part 2 of a very illuminating discussion we had on our efficacy studies and the effectiveness of VR. If you haven't listened to part 1, definitely go back and check that out. Otherwise, let's jump back into this amazing conversation. Yeah, this is really bringing to life and to light just all the things we talk about, that I've written about so much, but you two are out there really talking to people, really collecting their stories and some real data to back this up. So let's talk a little bit more about that. What kind of things are you measuring and what are you finding? To give our audience just a little teaser, and you can all go read the whole studies. We're not going to go into detail here, but I want to hear more about this stuff too, because I've helped work on them, writing them all up, but I haven't been able to delve too deeply into your process.
So we have a whole spectrum of outcomes that we measure. Then the way that we measure the outcomes is that we follow student learning journeys. So from the enrollment to engagement motivation, to learning, and to job placement. So every milestone here is very critical for student success. And we measure outcomes and metrics at each point and build a collection of evidence.
Yeah, and so in one of the earliest stages that Yoonjin's talking about, right, I'm doing studies where I'm trying to figure out, after people take the headset off, after they've gone through one of our simulations, what can they do if given real tools and objects, right? So Transfr has a laboratory space where we can bring people in, train them in the simulations, and then put them in front of a workbench, give them tools and say, can you show me now what you learned? And we're measuring very precisely the amount of learning that's happened because we're literally observing and scoring performance of individual steps within the process. And so you're getting a sense, right, that someone can do 50% of the task correctly, or they can do 100% of the task correctly. And that kind of precise information is extremely valuable in being able to report back out then to customers. And it's also a driving force for product improvement, as Yoonjin mentioned, because if we're saying that we're getting 75% learning, we want to see that at 100%, right? So then we want to think about ways that we can get up higher.
Yeah, that's really so interesting to hear sort of the variations in sort of what you're each working on and the different, how that dovetails with your own backgrounds. Keith, I did not know, for instance, that you had that memory has been the focus of your career, basically. That's so awesome. But there's a really great customer story I wrote up about Trio. We have like a 20-minute video that our video team put together. It's really awesome. Definitely check that out. But one of the most interesting stories from that experience for me was they said they basically did their own kind of amateur efficacy study. Is they took some of their office workers, put the headsets on them, put them through the conduit bending sim, and then they just gave them the tools and were like, do it. And they could do it. And you can hear how amazed these seasoned electrical instructors are. It's like, yeah, these are people who worked in an office who never picked up a tool, and we're putting the headset on them. We're giving them the stuff to do it, and they're doing it. So but just to hear that you're like, okay, we're breaking it down. They're doing steps 1 through 6, 100% correctly. Step 7, a little wonky. Step 8, better, etc. And then at the end of it, you're like, this person did 82.3% good, or whatever. Don't quote me on that, listener. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Keith.
And Jack, yeah, if I may add to that, there is a real joy in it, as there always is joy in learning. And often in the lab, when people are asked to go to the workbench and use the tools, I'll have to say at first there's some trepidation, right? Because these are tasks that they're not familiar with.
Yeah.
But once they get into the flow of it, they're often surprised and delighted that they can do what they've been asked to do. And it's, you really see like people's horizons opening up in front of them, right? Where they say, I can do this. And they may have lived, their whole lives and thought, oh, I'm not good with my hands or something, right? I remember there was a participant once who said, when we asked them to start doing the task, this seems like something my dad would do. Right. but right by implication, not me. I would not do this. Right. But you can learn an enormous amount inside the headset, and people realize that after they do the tasks. And in our studies, in fact, we often have follow-up questions once people have tried doing the task, because we find that asking questions after they have tried to do the task in the real world is they have a lot more insights, right, into the value of VR versus, say, if you ask them questions about their reaction to VR after they have only been inside the headset, right?
Yeah.
Once they have actually tried to do it in the real world, that's when they often really get excited about VR, because they say, look what I did. Look what I was able to do.
No, that's really cool. And so, we want to talk a little bit more about those responses in a bit, but let's give our audience a little more insight into who are we working with when we're collecting the information on these studies. So please give us a little more detail there.
Yeah, so the lab-based studies would be different in terms of the data collection and the design research, the design process. But we work with our clients directly. So that means we can get feedback from our customers directly, and also we can measure the student learning and improvement and learning gains by working with them and observing student behaviors. So yes, we have, as I mentioned, we have broad range of learners from all different backgrounds. In terms of gender, race, socioeconomic status, they're all coming from different backgrounds, and we cover, this broad range of audiences.
We're always looking as well for other partnerships. We have had a very fruitful partnership with Southern Illinois University, where one of our subject matter experts is at, who has helped us design simulations in the past, and obviously knows her area as well as anyone possibly could. And so we have been able to go over there and work with, and this is in the field of aviation, we've been able to go over there and work with aviation maintenance students for whom learning this information is going to be, the bread and butter of their lives. This is how they expect to get a paycheck. And so it's great to be able to work with folks like that who already know what their life goal is. And then we also, though, work with individuals, right, very young individuals who are still exploring options and everything in between.
Cool. Yeah, that kind of dovetails also with what you were talking before about how we have just a wide array of different sims. We got different backgrounds of people who we're doing all these studies with. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the studies. What have the responses been like from these test volunteers? Keith, you teased that a little bit more. And then what's been most interesting to the two of you as researchers as you've been conducting this research? So give us a couple of little insights there from your experiences.
When you talk about reactions from the research participants, I think there's no better way to put it than to say that people are really ecstatic about training on VR simulations. So we know that not just based on a subjective impression, but because when you ask people to rate their level of enthusiasm, they max out our scales. That's what I found in the lab. So, you say, how excited are you on a scale from 1 to something, and they're choosing the highest possible rating in many cases. And that's exceeding their level of excitement in some cases, for other ways of learning that they are totally okay with, right? So we've compared, say, learning from a simulation to learning from a video. Well, students enjoy learning from videos, instructional videos. YouTube, was built on the back of instructional videos in many cases, right? So folks are perfectly happy to sit down and watch a video. But you know what they'd rather do? They'd rather play a virtual reality simulation.
Well, and that's, yeah, humans are, we love to do stuff. We love to, there's so many, you at home, you're probably doing something as you listen to us right now, and folding laundry, knitting, driving, going to work, etc., on the exercise bike or whatever. So that it's not that surprising to find out that people like really love to just like get in the VR and mess around a little bit. And yeah, it doesn't make them like the other stuff less. But I would also venture to guess that it's a little unusual to have people maxing out scores in this way when you're doing research like this.
Yes, Jackie. I've never really seen anything quite like it. Again, wow. In my 25 years of research.
That's awesome. And how about you, Yunjin? Anything to add here?
Yeah. So when we work with students, especially with students, so we see the increased engagement, motivation, excitement from using the VR technology as part of their, learning resources. But also we see, their perception has been changed so that before they actually use the VR for learning purposes, sometimes they are skeptical. But once they actually use it for their learning, then they see the benefit of it, and also they actually improve their confidence and perception. Wow. So that's awesome. A positive, yes, exactly. So that's a positive outcome that we have seen from our students. But from my perspective, another interesting thing is that learning about instructors' point of view as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, having interview with instructors, they can share their own experiences, their perspectives, but also they have their evaluation of students and their observations of their students. So many students and many instructors reported that VR made teaching easier. So that's a very positive, feedback from the instructor. And also instructor can see that the student's motivation being changed more positively. We can triangulate this data by seeing the instructor's observations and student reaction to the VR learning. Then from all these data sources, we can see that the VR training that we provide is actually making a huge impact on their lives and learning. So that's a great aspect.
Well, this conversation is having a huge impact on my day because, it's awesome being at like a mission-driven organization like this. And Keith, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had something else you want to add.
Well, I will add that I agree about the mission-driven organization. And I will also just add, in terms of reactions, that in the laboratory, we've found that there are a lot of participants who, when they are finishing up a study, will say that they'd like to participate in future studies. It's a testament to how much they enjoy having the opportunity to learn in the headset. Again, I've been doing studies for a long time. It's traditionally been quite rare for research participants.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah. That is so awesome. I think you had mentioned that to me in one of our previous conversations. But speaking of keeping things going, speaking of people volunteering to do more and more research studies with us, what research studies do we have on the horizon, and what are some kind of the other big questions that you two are interested in answering?
Since we are launching the new products for health sciences, we want to understand better about how the students can actually benefit from these health science simulations. So the new simulations that we are launching, we want to see how the new simulations actually, help by expanding the domains of, all these areas. And also we conduct user research as well. So it will be a little bit like a narrower scope of research to pinpoint exactly what parts of our product may not work. So then when we identify those areas, then we can exactly improve or change or refine those areas to make our product better.
How about you, Keith?
I'm really interested in refining our understanding of what the secret sauce is, right? Exactly what elements of a transfer sim are supporting that boost in memory. Because once we identify it, we can do more of it, right? So that's one major goal. Mm-hmm. And then another is studying what happens when people use our simulations repeatedly. So in the studies that I've been able to do so far, it's kind of been one-off learning. So they go through the simulation just one time. But the beauty of virtual reality is that you can train on it over and over again safely and at no cost. And so if we sort of give learners the reins for themselves and say, here's a task that we want you to know really well. How would you go about learning it? At that point, people can say, well, I would play this simulation 3 times over, 4 times over, right? And each time I go through it, understand it a little bit better. And, the transfer sims are great at evaluating the learner because they have a built-in practice component where, again, you are being asked to do the task. And if you do anything incorrectly, you receive feedback on it. That is an ideal circumstance for learning, but it should be especially valuable when people can do it repeatedly, not just once.
Wow. So you both kind of already answered a little bit of this, especially you there, Keith. But like, as a final thought before we say goodbye here, what are you each most excited about with this kind of work and like with the opportunities on the horizon?
I am excited, I will say, about what future technological advances will allow us to do. So, for example, integrating more touch feedback into the virtual reality experience when we're talking about training hands-on tasks. One thing that technology doesn't allow for yet is letting people really feel the tools and objects, right?
Totally, yeah.
And that is right now a baked in technological limitation that when we can exceed that and actually provide that kind of feedback, I think you'll see further learning gains from virtual reality.
Very cool. How about you, Yunjin?
So, well, now we are in a world with lots of different new technology, and VR was one of the new technology that we introduced to the learning environment, and we have seen positive impact. But what I would like to do is that, as I mentioned, we have all different types of learners, and some learners are vulnerable, and we haven't really covered those learners yet. So with using these kinds of new tools and technology, we want to know how we can really help them change their lives and have their lives back. So that's the kind of the next goal of our efficacy research.
Wow. Again, awesome. I said before how kind of energized I am for the work we're all doing here, but this has been really tremendous. Thank you both so much for joining us here today on this episode. Thank you, all of you at home listening. And everybody, just have a really great day. For Upward with Transfr, I'm Jack Sislak. And thanks again. Come back soon. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. We're waving. You can't see us. We're getting out of here. All right. Take care, everybody.